Hello students, welcome back to another video. This is our close reading series and we're going through what the literal meaning of a text is and how we can pull out and determine the explicit information. So if you refer back to our goal of this entire unit, part of what we're dealing with is determining what the text says explicitly, and that's what we're going over today. In other words, it's the factual, objective information of what's given to us. It's not the interpretation, it's not our opinion or beliefs, it is what the author is clearly trying to tell us. So this is what it would look like for a fictional passage. This is from 1984, which was written by George Orwell, and it's just his opening paragraph. It's only 2 sentences, so my summary is not going to be very long, but I want you to notice a couple of things that I do here. Number 1, I find out the who. Who is this passage talking about? Well, fortunately, it tells us almost immediately. It says Winston Smith. Number 2, I move on. What is actually happening and what is he doing? Well, he's trying to escape the vile wind. Then we move on. When is this happening? Well, it's happening in April, and the clocks were striking 13. I'm not even going to get into the clocks striking 13. I'm not trying to figure out what that might mean, because then we'd be moving more into interpretation and inference, which we'll do in another video. But for now, we just know the clocks are striking 13. Where is this happening? Where is he trying to go? What's the only setting that's given here? Well, we know that he's trying to make his way to Victory Mansions. That's the only place that's mentioned here. I'm not even going to go into why it's called Victory Mansions. It's just the objective facts. He's going to Victory Mansions. Now, this next part is intriguing because if you go through and you look at some of the verbs, you're often figuring out the how. How is Winston Smith moving along, going to Victory Mansions? How is he going through and doing all this? Well, it says that he's nuzzling his chin, so he's moving his head down to protect his neck from the cold. And he's slipping quickly, so he's walking somewhere. He's walking to Victory Mansions quite fast because it's cold, but it's not quickly enough to prevent some dust from coming with him. So, do we need to go into a deeper meaning of what all these things mean and what's happening and the genre of the story? Certainly, but we're not doing it for this part. We're only trying to figure out the facts. This is reading comprehension 101. When passages get harder and when passages get longer, if I was doing the whole page, this obviously becomes a much more tedious process. But right now I have a small passage, so it's manageable. So then after I pull out all that information, I want to write an objective summary. I want to be able to tell you guys, or if I was to give this to you in Google Classroom or write it down for you, just tell you what this passage was about that I read. So I might say something like the author tells us that Winston Smith, walking towards Victory Mansion, tries to escape the vile wind on an April day by tucking his chin into his breast. So did I say everything that was written? No. I'm only trying to give a summary. Do I need the quotes? I don't necessarily need quotes all the way. I probably have a little bit too many quotes for this small of a summary. But I wanted to show you that you are going to be expected to integrate quotes into your objective summaries. You're not commenting on them like you normally would to give an interpretation. Instead, you're using them as part of your summary to move through the flow of your writing and to use some of the author's own words. Now, if you want to see what it would look like for a nonfiction news article from NewJersey.com, so something that's actually written in the news, it's not fictional, it's nonfiction, then this is what it would look like. Hello, so I am going to go through a nonfiction article, an actual news article written recently now, and show you and model for you what it would look like to pull out the explicit information as you close read. Because we know close reading, there's really 2 facets to it. There's close reading to first understand what's even being said and have just reading comprehension. And then there's close reading with the higher level skill of making inferences and connections. So really, when we close read this, I'm trying to pull out the explicit information that's told to me so that if somebody asks me, hey, what's this article about? I'm not giving them my opinion on what it's about. I'm just stating this is what the author means. Now, this is from NewJersey.com, and it's written by Matt Arco. So I need to do him justice, and I need to be able to tell somebody exactly what he's saying in this article so that I don't misconstrue what he's trying to write down. So we're really dealing with the who, what, when, where, and how. So it starts off and it says, New Jersey will likely be under social distancing orders to fight the spread of the coronavirus for the next 6 weeks before restrictions could begin to be pulled back and some semblance of normalcy returns to day-to-day living, Phil Murphy, governor, said Tuesday evening. So we already have a big indicator of what this article is going to be about. We know that this author is front loading his information and saying, hey, this is really what I'm reporting on here. So that is super helpful. But we also have a bunch of who's here. Potentially, this is going to be an article about New Jersey, right? Of the who right there. But it could also be about Governor Phil Murphy. So we do have a couple who's. It seems to be more so about the New Jersey because it's New Jersey doing the strict social distancing. And notice there too, we already have the what. What is he talking about here? Well, it's that New Jersey's going to be under strict social distancing orders for the next 6 weeks, right? And when is this going to be? Well, in this case, we know that it's said on Tuesday evening. And since it's in April, we know that he's really talking about, as he says down here, think more like June or July, not May, Murphy said. So as disheartening as that is for our skill of reading for explicit information, we've already learned a big indication over what this article is and what Matt Arco is reporting on. He's clearly telling us that New Jersey will have to continue social distancing until about June or July. And he's reporting that that's what Murphy is saying. But we go on a little bit more and let's see if we learn anything else. So the article goes on to say, and now this is a quote from Phil Murphy, I personally think in the warmer weather we could begin to find our footing, assuming again that we've got the healthcare infrastructure, especially broad-scale testing, that we're going to need to give us the confidence, the governor said. A lot of times, especially when you have a short article like this, it could even be helpful to summarize each little snippet or each paragraph in your own words to the side. So if I were to do that here, it's clearly what Murphy is saying here. Excuse my terrible handwriting. But Murphy is saying, and in my own words, I could say something like warm weather is good. And then I could add, but testing is needed. And again, you can't read this. I'm sorry. So what does that do for me? Well, I'm summarizing even smaller portions here. So without reading really the rest of this, because it'll take too long, I can point out to you guys that there's a few other things that if I'm looking to objectively summarize this article, I want to make sure I talk about how Murphy believes it's undeniably now flattening because of strict social lockdown orders. So he's doing that cause and effect. Because we've been in lockdown, things have gotten better, but he still wants us to continue, and specifically wants us to continue until June or July. He believes that this is working, and Matt Arco, the author of this article, is reporting what Murphy's saying there. Now, if you scroll down even more, you see that the reason why Murphy believes that warmer weather will be a little bit better in June or July after about 6 more weeks of social distancing, we can start lessening it, is because he's afraid of the boomerang effect. So that's another part of the what. And so as you're going to see in a moment, I wrote an objective summary of this article, and you can see whether or not I did it justice. So you should look for if I was able to integrate some quotations of what was actually said in the article, and if I was able to get the main gist across. So now that you saw me go through and read that passage, here's what the objective summary would look like. Now notice the size of my summary. The 1984 summary I gave was only 1 sentence, but that's because that passage was only 2 sentences long. Now you can see that the article that I got, which was about a page, it was not long at all, it was full of a lot of dialogue. Notice the length that I have here. I have a small paragraph. The longer your article, the longer your summary is going to be. So if you have a small article, you're going to have a small summary, but the bigger your article, usually the more you can include and the easier it is to actually write a summary because you're given more information. But let's go through and read what I put. According to Matt Arco from NewJersey.com, always good to give credit to who the author is, New Jersey will be in lockdown for another 6 to 8 weeks. Governor Murphy fears a boomerang effect unless everyone continues to stay home because it is working. Arco goes on to report that Murphy believes June or July is a more realistic timeline for easing restrictions so long as the healthcare infrastructure and broad-scale testing can be implemented. Essentially, this article tells New Jerseyans to gear up for another couple of months of adhering to social distancing guidelines. So notice a few things that I did with the structure here. I started off giving credit to the author of the actual article. Then I moved in and I said what was actually happening and who it was happening to and when it was happening. But then I concluded it with a final sentence that was a summation of everything that I said and a summation of the entire article, the big point, the big idea that Matt Arco wanted us to get at, and I just put it into my own words. So in conclusion, when you're dealing with the explicit information, the tier 1 of reading comprehension, you're just going back to those elementary school days of who, what, where, when, and how.